Hey guys, it's Bree here at Blossom and Branch Farm, and I talk all the time about how much I love yarrow in the garden, not just for cut flowers, but also for medicinal purposes. And please bear in mind, I am not a doctor. None of this is intended to be medical advice, but we're gonna talk about how I use yarrow in the garden, everywhere from tinctures, salves, styptic powders, and even a glycerite. So let's go. I'm going to harvest some yarrow. I also wanted to show you my favorite varieties of yarrow if you're looking to grow some in your cutting garden.
Let's go get itchy.
First step, we gotta go get my sickle, because that's how I harvest yarrow. Let's go get it. Okay, I've acquired my sickle. Now, I often hear people thinking that I'm using the sickle incorrectly. Don't worry, I learned from my dad, who learned from his dad, who only had one hand. So I was gonna say it's perfectly safe, but that doesn't sound good. Although to be fair, he didn't lose his hand with the sickle, he lost it in a corn thresher, so just to be clear. All right, I've got my sickle, I'm gonna go harvest. I use this because it's faster and it's easier than cutting by hand. I have some jars ready. I have 3 big jars because I'm going to be infusing my yarrow into some different liquids. Now you can harvest your yarrow when the flowers are fresher and they're more in bloom, and then you can actually use the flowers as well to do this. I'm just using the leaves mostly to do my styptic powder and my tinctures, and so it doesn't really matter that the blooms have faded. I'm using the fresh leaves anyway, and even if the leaves are dried, you could still use them. So if you have dried yarrow, don't despair, but the fresher, the better for these purposes. It is a beautiful day, a little on the warm side, but that's all right. Here's our yarrow row, and you can see that actually it is past its prime. It started to dry in place. I left it this year basically as long as I could because the pollinators were enjoying it so very much. Hey, look who's throwing it up. Come on. Hi. All right, so I'm just gonna grab some armloads. Now this variety of yarrow, I do have a few different varieties, but this one you see here is one called Firefly Peach Sky. And I like it because it is this very beautiful peachy color, and it's not so bright and harsh yellow, but that does mean that it doesn't dry quite as well. Now I wanted to take a second here and show you how I dry my yarrow. Now this is a little unique and not necessarily how we dry all of our flowers, but because the yarrow are so pretty, I like to display them a little bit. So what we've done is taken a length of chicken wire and attached it to the roof of the drying barn. And then we're just sticking our flowers straight up and through. So a lot of people ask how we do this, and it's really very simple. We don't even really attach them. We just shove the bunches of yarrow straight up and through those holes in the chicken wire, and they stay in place as they dry. We have zip tied the chicken wire up to those beams so that it stays in place, and really that's pretty much it. It dries in place here, and it's a nice and pretty way of drying our flowers. It does make a little bit of a mess, so just be prepared for that if you choose to make your own yarrow cloud. Okay, so those bright yellow yarrows tend to dry nicer if you're looking for better colors in your dried flowers, so those vibrant yellows that you often see. Whereas this variety of yarrow doesn't tend to dry as nicely. It's really more of a brown, although this is pretty for fall too in its own way. But this is a variety called Firefly Peach Sky. It's a cultivar, and it's a cultivar of the yellow varieties. So there are yellows, there's whites, there's pinks. This is kind of a peachier. So I like to grow this one because it's nice for my cutting garden. It goes with a lot of different flowers, including a lot of those peachy varieties that I grow. So you can watch our last video about the peachy bouquet we made. This yarrow goes really well with that color palette. Now that being said, there are some questions about whether these cultivar yarrows are as medicinally beneficial as the more straight native varieties of yarrow. And to be honest, there's just not a lot of research out there about it. But We do use it. I do find that I feel like it has some benefits. We've used it as a styptic powder before. It seems to work just as well. So I do think that the closer to the natural color that the yarrow is, the more beneficial it probably is, which is what we've seen for pollinators as well, for example. So I'm just gonna start by stripping off these lower leaves, and I'm just gonna grab the yarrow here at the top and pull straight down. Oh, I had a little buggy in there. He's gone. And then I'm gonna fill up my jar, almost a little over halfway with yarrow leaves. This is one of those things that I like to do in the fall. Even though fall is busy with trying to get things preserved and stored away for winter, it's just so helpful when we start getting into cold season and flu season. I like to have a yarrow tincture on hand. Respiratory wise, it's good for you. It's also good for things like wounds and cuts. The tinctures can be applied that way. But because tincture is made with alcohol, usually vodka, like 100 proof vodka, my kids don't usually like to take the tincture. So instead, that's why I also make a glycerite. So I am using vegetable glycerin to infuse with these yarrow leaves. So it gets a lot of the same benefits, but it has a much milder taste, which is better for littles. So this is our first application. This is going to be for our yarrow tincture. So we are going to fill this up with our leaves, and then we'll top it off with vodka. Now we want to make sure that, if we're using fresh leaves, that they're fully covered all the way up with that vodka so that nothing is molding, because if they're not fully covered, they just get wet, they might mold. So let's go ahead and pour this in, and then we're gonna get our next jar ready for the next application. Okay, here I am harvesting my next batch of yarrow leaves, and this batch is going to be for our styptic powder use. So all I'm doing is I'm harvesting some yarrow into a bowl. I'm going to let this dry, and then we're going to grind it up with a mortar and pestle and store it in a jar. So this can be used mostly for wound care. So if you have an open bleeding wound that you're shaving and you cut yourself, similar to a styptic powder. So this we let dry, we grind it up into a fine powder, and then it can be applied to wounds to help stop bleeding. Now, again, please remember to consult your doctor, especially if you have a particularly deep gash. You would probably want to go and get medical help. Don't rely on yarrow, but yarrow can help for small wounds, especially with kiddos, because it's distracting. You can be like, oh, let's use this flower to fix your owie, and then they get interested in that. All right, that should be more than enough to last us, so we'll just set this aside to dry. Okay, I have 2 more uses that I am going to use my yarrow for. So I'm going to fill 2 more jars with the leaves, and then we're going to top them off. So the first one that we made was that yarrow tincture using vodka. We're going to let that sit for about 4 to 6 weeks, kind of giving it a little gentle turn every week or so. And we want to do that in a dark place. And then we'll strain out those yarrow leaves, keep it in a dark colored jar in a dark spot, and we can pull it out and take that 3 times a day, several drops of that yarrow tincture. And it helps with things like, it helps with everything from digestion to women's health. So it can help theoretically regulate menses, and lots and lots of benefits of yarrow tincture. Feel free to look it up. Again, I don't want to seem like I'm prescribing anything, so handy, trusty old Google is helpful for this. All right, almost done here. And you can see this really only took 1 batch of yarrow. And now I still have these dried yarrow flowers, so I can still do some kind of a craft with those. So maybe I'll make a wreath when I'm done here out of our yarrow flowers. Really bring this activity full circle. All right, so I've got 2 jars. This jar, again, that first jar is going to be for vodka. This second jar is going to be for our glycerite. So again, very similar benefits as a yarrow tincture, slightly less potent and sweet. So glycerite tends to have a sweet taste to it. So again, it's easy to get kiddos to take the glycerite versus the tincture. So I'll just show how I'm going to top this off. And Glycerite is very thick. You can see it's kind of globbing on in there. Again, all the way to covered. I'm gonna save a little bit of that because I'm also gonna make a chamomile one. And we wanna make sure we're fully submerged with our leaves here. And there we go. Now we'll put this in a cool, dark place for 4 to 6 weeks. I've got that Glycerite. Oh, and by the way, you can do a Glycerite with things like chamomile as well. So chamomile and lavender would be a really nice kind of bedtime Glycerite. You can mix it with some warm milk at bedtime. All right, so this last application of Yarrow, I'm gonna do just the same as the other two. And I am going to infuse this one with some sweet almond oil. So if you will recall, maybe you don't recall, maybe you're new here, in which case, welcome. But we have a video from not too long ago where we showed how to make a salve, an herbal salve, using, I believe we used calendula. And I infused the sweet almond oil, which is a great carrier oil for body use. And I infused that with all kinds of different things. So we've done calendula before, that's what we did in the video. Right now we're doing Yarrow, so this one is great for things like wounds, because Yarrow also has some antiseptic qualities. So I like to use this, for example, for my daughter who has eczema. It works really well for her. And so we're gonna go ahead and infuse this one with sweet almond oil and Yarrow, and then we'll make it into a salve. So it can be used for chapstick, again, for a balm, for wounds, for blisters, all that kind of stuff. At our house, we use that salve for everything. And I'll link that video below so you can also make that. All right, so that pretty much took one large bunch of Yarrow. With that one bunch, we were able to make our tincture, our Glycerite, our sweet almond oil for our salves, and our styptic powder. So that's pretty much it. It's very simple. If you want to be using Yarrow from your garden in a medicinal and herbal way, please feel free to share how you like to use Yarrow. Oh, you can also use it as a tea. I forgot to mention. So our dried leaves and flowers from the Yarrow, you can also use it as a tea, steep it just like an herbal tea. Again, make sure that you're researching, as always, any counterindications on any of these herbal things. Remember, I'm not a doctor. None of this is prescribing you anything. But let's see if we can make a wreath with these leftover flowers, because now we have all these pretty brown, dried flowers. Let's see what we can do. All right, so I found a wreath frame. I just like to reuse these every year. You can see it still has some old bits and bobs on it, but reusing these and then just putting different things on depending on the season. So for this Yarrow wreath, I think what I'm going to try to do, and it actually works really well that this Yarrow is not fully dried. The more dried it is, the messier it is to work with. So this is actually quite nice because it's still a little bit pliable. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by working in bunches, and I'm going to attach my first one, and then I'm just gonna wire right around the base. And then I'm gonna just keep going all the way around. So here's my next one. I'm gonna just put it right next to that. And again, nice and tight on that bind wire. This is called bind wire. It is by Oasis, and it's actually a craft paper wrapped twine. And we talk more about that twine and why I like to use it for almost everything in our flower arranging class. So if you wanna learn more about kind of this decorative aspect, you can always pop onto our Teachable shop and sign up for that. All right, so I'm just gonna continue all the way around in that same fashion. This smells so good. I love the smell of Yarrow. I know some people, I guess, don't like it. I didn't know that until recently. Let's just go all the way. Guys, our wreath is done. You can see it looks really sweet and beautiful for fall and natural. And I always love these kind of browns and natural colors for fall versus the dyed kind of bright artificial colors that we tend to see in stores. This is Really, these kind of browned out yellows and gold tones are really reminiscent of true fall for me. So again, yarrow as a garden plant, you can do so many different things with it. It's beautiful as a cut flower and for dried things. It's nice for tinctures, for glycerites, for salves, for balms, for teas, for all kinds of different things. And so today I just kind of wanted to show you some of the things that we are doing with our yarrow, and I hope that you're inspired to hopefully grow yarrow in your garden. Now, a couple tips are that remember, if you are planning to grow yarrow, do a little research first. Don't go out and plant a whole row of it like I did in the middle of your garden, because a lot of yarrows can spread fairly aggressively. So you want to do a little research, try a couple plants, see if they spread a lot. Now, if they do spread for you, you can always deadhead them, and that will help keep them from reseeding themselves if you deadhead before they go to seed. Or you can dig them up and divide them every year. So if you want to multiply your yarrow, you can dig them up, keep them from spreading into places where you don't want them, and put them in places where you do, maybe where the soil is poor or you don't have much irrigation. All right, that's it for yarrow talk today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and don't forget to tune in, like, and subscribe. We appreciate it so much here at the farm. We'll see you around here next time.